Unreal. Mark's going to be so proud of me. Right. No, thank you everyone for coming. I'm not too sure how this is going to go. This is my first ever webinar, so just bear with us if I'm tripping over my words or anything like that. But I did think that you would all be missing Mark a little bit today, hence why I've shaved the mullet off. I've tried to make myself look as much like Mark as possible. Laura in. But yeah, so I'm just going to start with a wee bit of admin, and that's just talking around our trackers. Now, I'm afraid I don't have an example to show you, but if we go to my side of things, the training side of things, if we go to the last page with the key performance indicators, now there's a few people who have not quite finished putting them in. I just wanted to clear a few things up because I've had a couple of questions. So when we're tracking our sessions, I would like all of our sessions to be logged, sets, reps on the Trainerize app, and that's for everything. So that's for our key performance lifts, and that is for our accessory exercises as well. And that is so that you can have a good understanding of your own progress. And if I need a better understanding of maybe why you're plateauing or if you're not pushing as hard, then it means that I can go there as a port of call. What I want logged in the tracker app, in the tracker on Excel, is I'm just going to input your key performance indicator lifts. This is so that I can get a good understanding of how you're progressing just at a quick glance. So I can just look at that tracker and just see that we have been kind of pushing that weight little by little. We've not stagnated. And then if I need to see any more information, then I can go onto the Trainerize app and I can get my information from there. So it was just to touch on the fact that there will only be maybe 2, 3, or 4 lifts that I will put on your trackers. And then I only want you to focus on them on the tracker. I don't want you logging absolutely everything. It's a pain in the arse. It's a ball ache doing it on Trainerize and the tracker. So just key performance lifts on the tracker, which I will communicate with you. And I'll pop them all down if they're not on already. And then on Trainerize, making sure that we're logging absolutely everything, because that's where I'll go to get all the information that I need. Well, today's webinar, if I can figure out how to share my screen, is going to be a little bit on training and management of training and a little bit of information around that. So let me just see if I can. Anyone? Yes, share screen. Awesome. Cool. No idea what's happening here. What am I doing? Bear with me, guys. Yeah, thank God, I was starting to panic there. Brilliant. So I'm just going to be talking around management of training, a little bit of physiology. So if anyone does have any questions throughout this, then feel free to just chuck the questions in the chat bot and I'll check them periodically and I'll try to touch on absolutely everything by the end. But this is just intra-session training management. So this graph here might look like complete gibberish, but basically this is what happens to your body through the duration of a single exercise session. Okay, so this is right here is our baseline level of fitness, this line. Okay, when we train, what actually happens is stress, physiological stress builds up in our body. Your fitness, your ability to adhere to the demands of the environment, your fitness decreases through the duration of a session. That's quite apparent, whereas at the start of a session, you might be able to squat your 100 kilograms for 10 reps, say. There's not a chance in hell that you'd be able to do that by the end of a session. You're going to have more central nervous system fatigue. Your muscles are going to be more fatigued. So through the duration of a session, your fitness actually declines. When we rest, so after the session, that's actually when we start to recover. That is when our muscles start to grow. That is when we actually have our protein synthesis. So exercise initiates something called protein synthesis. It sets off a signaling cascade, and it means that we have higher levels of HGH. It increases our testosterone levels, an array of things, which means that we are going to build muscle. I'm drawing a lot of attention to this recovery time because I think it's very, very, very easy for people, especially in an exercise program like this and such a committed community. It's very easy to get caught up in thinking, I've got to hammer the gym every single day. I've got to fucking go hell for leather. I've got to do this and I'll do my run immediately afterwards. When, in all honesty, that's going to possibly be more detrimental to your progress and to your recovery than taking it a little bit easier. What we want to think is we want to hit the minimal effective dose, okay? So we just want to do the minimum to help us get to where we want to go. After we've recovered a little bit, so we stop training, recovery happens over time. This is how we get stronger. It's something called supercompensation. Basically, what's happened is our body has been subjected to a certain amount of stress. It's been subjected to a novel stimulus. And then it thinks, shit, I might encounter this again. I'm going to have to be prepared for this. And it actually comes back stronger. So that's why the rest is so important in a training program. And I think my next slide shows this. Nope, it doesn't. I'll show you that one afterwards then. So when it comes to our training, this is a bit of intra-session training management. I'm going to go through training for strength. And I'm going to go through training for hypertrophy as well, because there's a little bit of a difference between training styles for the two. When we are thinking about training for strength, we don't want to actually be taking all of our lifts to failure. And I would actually recommend not taking any of your main key performance indicator lifts to failure if we're focusing on strength in those. If we're focusing completely on hypertrophy, then 100% go for possibly just the last set. At the start of a program, test a 1 rep max on our key performance indicators. We'll go through the 6, 8, 12 weeks and then retest at the end. We don't want to retest our 1 rep max very regularly because that's not going to be massively beneficial for us. It's an awful lot for us to put through our body. So about every 6 to 12 weeks, this is going to be a good way to give you data on your progress. So yeah, we're tracking on the app, we're tracking our progressive overload. That's brilliant. But it can be very, very, very rewarding to look back from 8 weeks and see if you squatted 100 kg and then look back and say, oh, I've got my 110 kg squat. It's very, very useful for recognizing success. At the start of the block, if we're training for strength, I actually recommend starting a lot lighter than you think. Strength can be trained at 60%, at 60% effort. It all depends on the output. So your intent in the lift. We want that concentric, so that upward phase of the lift. We want that to be as powerful as possible. That's because a lot of your strength gains come from the neuromuscular system. So you've got increased strength of neural firing. You've got increased speed of the neural firing as well, which all leads to kind of more efficient muscle contractions. You're also able to recruit more motor units. So a motor unit innervates a bunch of muscle fibers. If you're able to recruit more motor units, you're able to recruit more muscle fibers more readily and then produce more force. The reason I say start light is because we want to progress linearly for as long as possible. If we think about levels of training and training age, I'll use myself as an example. I've been training consistently since I was about 16. So that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that's 9 years really of consistent training. I would still class myself massively as like an intermediate lifter. So we would say around about 1 to 3, 4 years beginner. After that, intermediate. Very, very few people will ever reach an advanced lifter. That's years and years and years of progressive overload, consistent training. By starting light, it means that we can progress linearly for longer. It's the easiest way to progressively overload. It means that we don't have to think about playing around with intensity, playing around with different percentages of 1 rep maxes, which can really complicate things. It means that we can just put weight on. If you plateau, pull back a little bit, continue to put the weight on. And starting lighter means that you can still train that strength. It means that at the start of a program, when you'll have maybe possibly lots of new exercises, which is a novel stimulus, maybe you've been out of training for a wee while, that also makes the training a novel stimulus. it means that we're going to recover a lot better from it and still see very good strength gains. So what I would recommend, start program at 60% of normal working weight. The first 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to be able to see a quick increase in strength from there. So we're going to be able to push around about 2.5 to 5 kg each week in the lifts. I would say that you could push for 2.5 to 5 kg each session as well. So it doesn't just have to be each week. If you're doing each lift once per week, then of course do that 2.5 or 5 kg each week. If you're doing, say, a squat on a Monday and a squat on a Thursday, feel free to overload at each session, because by that point your body will have recovered. So as I've mentioned just down here, it takes around about 48 to 72 hours for your body to actually fully recover from an exercise session. The more fatiguing the session is in terms of muscle damage, so the more eccentric contractions, the closer to failure we're going, the longer it's going to take for us to recover from that session. So that's just something to bear in mind. And a lot of this is just understanding your body and learning about your body as well. So first 2 to 3 weeks, looking at a 2 to 5 kg increase each session. And then after that, it's very likely that your progress is going to slow. Then by this point, we're going to be working at closer to your maximum effort, and we'll have been overloading as well. So we'll be looking at around about 0.5 to 2.5 kg per week thereafter. And it is just little increments. If you can go smaller than a 0.5 kg, go smaller than a 0.5 kg. As soon as we start getting a wee bit cocky and lifting with our ego and popping 5 kg on each side, 5 kg each side, even on a back squat, it doesn't sound like that much. That's still 10 kilograms. That's an awful lot of weight. If you think about you doing a bench press, say your bench is, my maths is shocking and I'm just trying to do some maths off the cuff. Say if you're benching 100 kg and you put a 5 kg on each side, that's an extra 10% put onto that bench in one session. That's absolutely massive. We're looking for little increments each time. And then if we're training for strength, I would recommend not going with past 3 reps in reserve in every single set. So I want to start our strength when we're fresh, so we can give the maximum output, the maximum intent to our concentric contraction. So concentric is that upward phase. We don't want to be going near failure, so that we can keep repeating that intent, keep repeating that output every single set. So stay 3 reps in reserve, take the long rests, and just overload little by little. And then overloading for hypertrophy, it's actually a lot easier. So for strength, we want to balance our recovery and our stress a lot more to try and find that balance. For hypertrophy, you can kind of just work to break down that muscle. What I would say, and going back to the first slide, is remembering that the second slide anyways, if we take too many lifts to failure, if we're going past failure on a couple of lifts, maybe using drop sets and stuff, that is going to take longer for our body to recover. That could affect your output in subsequent sessions. You kind of want to train to the extent where you're activating, but not annihilating. That's kind of rule of thumb, is activate, not annihilate. If you're doing a leg day and you're struggling to have a shit the next day on the toilet because it's sore to sit down, and genuinely you've possibly actually pushed it a little bit too far. And I would recommend pulling back a little bit in the next session, possibly reducing the weight, reducing your effort in that session, so that you can keep having that output each time. If you're only training a muscle group once per week, which usually I wouldn't tend to program with a muscle group once per week. However, maybe you're only doing one full body, maybe you're doing a push and a pull day. In those programs, you may just be hitting body groups, muscle groups once per week. Feel free to take them a little bit closer to failure, because if there's about a week in between each time, then it means that you are 100% going to be fully recovered by that time. You might actually benefit more from taking those lifts to failure. But for hypertrophy, what we're looking for is staying around about 2 reps in reserve for the majority of the sets, especially our big compounds. And then I would say the last set of your exercises, feel free to take that one to failure if you want. There's no need to, but feel free to take that one to failure. And that's just going to kind of increase that metabolic stress. It's going to increase that muscle damage. So when we're thinking about gaining muscle, gaining size, there's 3 boxes that we can hit to gain size. We don't have to hit all 3, but everybody's body responds differently to different stimulus. So for example, me personally, I know that I gain a lot of muscle quickly from doing heavy lifts. My body responds very well to high force, but I know a lot of people whose bodies don't respond as well to high force. They respond very well to high metabolic stress. High metabolic stress is the burn. That is when you are working closer to failure. You're doing those higher reps. So those 12, 15, 20 reps, that's the metabolic stress. It's the burn that you're feeling in your body. And metabolic stress is basically, it's the byproducts of respiration in your muscles coming outside the cells. So it's intracellular components coming outside is what's causing the metabolic stress. Again, that sends off a signaling cascade, and we build muscle from that. So you'll usually see, and those of you who have had chats with me, which will be the majority of you, I like to take in my sessions, I like to have a heavy main lift, usually focusing on strength so that we're getting our high force. And then I like our accessories to kind of be a little bit higher volume, so getting more metabolic stress. And then you'll either have conditioning or isolation exercises at the end. That conditioning, it'll be higher reps, less rest time, building more metabolic stress as well. The muscle damage comes from novel stimulus, so new exercises, or from working close to or to failure or pushing past failure. So you'll see throughout the duration of your programs, we're hitting the high force, we're hitting the high metabolic stress through our accessories, and then we're also hitting muscle damage if you choose to take some sets to failure. And so when it does come to hypertrophy, I do want you to see the reps that I give you as a guide and not gospel. Okay, so for example, your energy levels are going to fluctuate every day. There may be a day where, say last week, you benched or you squatted 100 kg for 10, and that was 2 reps in reserve. And you may expect the next week to be able to pop 2.5 kg on top of that and do 102.5 kg for 12 as your progressive overload. However, you may just be a little bit more fatigued. You might not hit that. That's absolutely fine. Listen to your body. Those reps are a guide and not gospel. It's not as important with hypertrophy to focus too much on the reps. Focus a little bit more on how it feels. And then, as I mentioned before, take any isolations and later sets of compounds to failure. This increases the metabolic stress and the muscle damage, and it won't affect the quality of the reps. It's very important that we are always moving through full range of motion. We are having good mind-muscle connection. That has been shown to actually increase the metabolic signaling afterwards, is having good mind-muscle connection. But also it just draws a good amount of attention to your form. And I'd much rather, through your sessions, you have a lot of quality sets rather than a few quality sets and lots of sets near failure. And then we can overload it with volume or weight. So this is just a wee framework down here that is a good one to use. So it's, can you hit the reps prescribed? Yes, brilliant. Increase the load for the next time. No, you can't hit them. Cool. Build the reps each session until you can. When you can hit the reps, increase the weight. Likelihood is you won't be able to hit those reps again. Brilliant. That's just another opportunity to keep building up those reps until you hit it. So basically with hypertrophy, a good way to overload your sessions is to leapfrog between volume, intensity, volume, intensity. I'm going to check the chat box, see if there's been any questions because I've not checked that. No, just me getting rinsed for being bold. Brilliant. Starting to regret this decision a little bit now. So why is this important? Why is managing our recovery important? So this is actually a version of the graph that I showed you at the start of this webinar. I'm gunning through this. I think for about 5 minutes, I can definitely slow down. So you see here, this is training. If we train too hard and we don't fully allow ourselves to recover, that stress builds through the duration of a program. So that is here, this red line, that's your fitness again. If we're not fully recovering through the duration of a program, our fitness will actually decrease. This is when we can see ourselves maybe getting a bit weaker. This is when we can see ourselves plateauing and not getting stronger anymore, our energy levels fatiguing. And this, if you're in a calorie deficit, this is something that is more likely to happen quicker because we don't have that energy available in our body to recover as readily as if we were in a calorie surplus, says chatbot. Since you may tempted to get the clip. Oh, thank you very much, Grant. I appreciate the love. Throw myself off topic. Okay, so this is kind of where we plateau. We would stop seeing progress as soon as we take that stress off again. That's the super compensation. That is us gaining fitness. That is us gaining muscle. That is us gaining strength. Okay, so I think the importance that I was kind of wanting to draw today was it's so easy to get caught up in hitting the gym, hitting the runs, when we're in this 12-week challenge thinking, I'm going to do my gym, I'm going to do my run, and then I'm going to do my gym tomorrow. I was chatting on a call the other day, and there was one of his training in the gym 6 days a week, and then doing another session after that 6 days a week, and saying, oh, I think I'm training too much. Yes. Yeah. 110% training too much there, especially on a calorie deficit. So what I did is I dropped it down to total 5 sessions per week. And I was like, mate, I know you're going to want to do 6, so I'll give you an optional session. The majority of yous, 4-5 days a week is absolutely plenty to gain muscle, gain size, to train, and get that recovery in. But if we train too hard, each session, we're going to keep going down. I think I've got rules of thumbs after this. No, I don't. I love how I'm just surprising myself with this PowerPoint. So if we do feel at a point like you haven't been able to progressively overload as you've liked, you feel like your progress has stalled for around about 3 weeks, then there's a couple of things that this may be. One thing is that you may be taking each session too hard. Obviously, there is multiple different boxes that could be contributing to this. It could be sleep, it could be nutrition, it could be mental health. There's an awful lot. But one thing is you could be training very hard and going to failure too much. In this situation, a pullback week can be very, very useful. And myself, I actually factor into my own programs when I'm training. I factor in a pullback week every 6 weeks. I do that in line with my running. I prefer to go a little bit longer in my own programs because I just like training and like feeling fatigued. But I like to pull back and I factor that in. So in this pullback week, going around about 60% of the load that you were doing before and just going through the motions, and I'd actually decrease the amount of sets that you're doing as well. What this does is it kind of removes all that physiological stress. It allows your body to adapt, and then it allows that supercompensation to occur. That supercompensation being when we've trained, fitness decreases, rest, fitness increases again, and it increases to above baseline. So as I mentioned before, if you're training concurrently, a concurrent program is when you are looking at pushing with 2 fitness attributes at the same time. So a common one would be with cardiovascular fitness and strength. They are 2 fitness attributes that don't really go hand in hand. So this is a good opportunity, actually. I've had a few questions about this. If the metabolic signaling pathways, I keep using that very loose term through this whole webinar, the signaling cascades for gaining size and gaining strength actually inhibit the signaling cascades for gaining cardiovascular fitness. So if we are looking purely at performance, you would look to try and separate cardiovascular fitness and strength training by around about 6 to 8 hours, even better, 12 hours. So in a concurrent program, This is when kind of managing that stress becomes important, because we're stressing our body in one way from the resistance training, which we want to recover from, and then we're stressing our body in a different way with our cardiovascular training, which we also want to recover from. What I actually want to touch on here, though, having said that, is, and again, I say this all the time, I might be talking for myself, we're not top 1% athletes. If you want to go for a run after your gym session, fucking do it. I'd much rather you do that and you enjoy yourself. It's going to make a 2% difference, right? It's literally minimal. But if training concurrently, we do want to really try to manage our stress. So what I would recommend is every 4 weeks, do a deload. So you'll see any running program that I provide you, it will usually have a deload on the 4th week. Sometimes I'll push it to the 6th week. I would recommend pulling back in your resistance training alongside pulling back with the running training. And that can be very, very useful for your body in terms of getting rid of that stress and letting that super compensation occur. What I want you to do is, if progress stalls for around about 3 weeks, and no matter how much you've tried, you have tried to progressively overload little by little, your weight still isn't increasing, your weight lifts still aren't going up, then take a deload and let me know. Message me, we'll take a deload, and then we'll also have a conversation around other lifestyle factors that could be affecting your training, because obviously it's a massively multifaceted thing. Your body, it's not understandable really. There's an awful lot of different components which go towards your progress. Training is genuinely a very minimal bit of it. So let me know if you do feel like you're stalling, if you do feel like you're plateauing. I'll have a look at your overload, we'll have a talk around that. We'll have a wee chat about your lifestyle, your sleep, your nutrition, your habits, and we'll take a deload and we'll take a pullback. Here we go. And this is just about utilizing tools available. Tools available being me, not calling myself a tool, but you know what I mean, the tool in your fitness journey toolbox. I am very, very big on open communication on WhatsApp, and there is zero silly questions, because I'm well aware that this industry is an absolute maze of bollocks. There is so much shite online, and there's so much contradictory information that there is no silly questions. So just anything you are thinking about, just pipe up and ask us. As I said, if you don't progress for a couple of weeks, then let me know. If you pick up a niggle, let me know. And then as well, I'm a nerd. I'm a bit of a geek. I love training. I love the why. I love the physiology. So if you are interested in why I've chosen certain exercises, and why it's ordered in the way it is, why is this rest time this way, why is this tempo this way, and just ask me, and the likelihood is I will chew your absolute ear off. And then this one here is a little bit less relevant, but if you are questioning which exercises to overload with strength or to overload with hypertrophy, just ask me. As I said at the start, I have been inputting the key performance indicators onto your trackers. There's a few I haven't done yet. I'm going to get them done this evening, and they'll clear that up for you. Make sure, because I'm not sure, try to copy and paste them all each week. So each block, I wish I had an example to show you, but I didn't want to out someone on the key performance indicators. If you copy and paste them, each row is a new week. And that just means that I can scroll down and see how we've been overloading. Huge one for me is the movement analysis. And now I am genuinely passionate that this is the single most useful tool in your training toolbox in terms of your confidence in your lifts, in terms of even if you progressively overload, you bump the lift up, that can affect your form massively. That's more force going through your body. Your body has to adapt in terms of its balance, in terms of its proprioception, to adjust to its position to hold that weight. That can throw your form off. So even if you bump the weight up a bit, send me a video. I will perform a movement analysis. I'll give you a full breakdown of your form, good bits, and maybe the possibly poor bits that we can work on. I'll send you a wee Loom video of me chatting through it. and I'll give you actionable cues on your form. So I will give you up to around about 3 cues to implement the next time you do it. The way that this works best is if you send the video, I'll do the movement analysis and send you it over, and then implement the cues, refilm the exercise, and then send it back to me. Not tooting my own trumpet here at all, but the likelihood is, even if you think your form is perfect the second time you do it after implementing the cues, the likelihood is I'll be able to look at it and pick you up on a few more things to make it perfect. I'm a wee bit of a perfectionist when it comes to the lifts. I think it's very important that you're all moving through a full range of motion and lifting correctly, because the last thing I want is for you to get injured. So even if you've implemented the cues, send it back to me, and you'll just keep progressing, keep progressing, keep progressing. And it is the single most useful tool for you to continue to build confidence in the gym. And then, yeah, I've also made a document, which I think I've sent over to quite a few of you. If I haven't sent this document over to you, then let me know and I'll send it to you after this. I've made a document outlining progressive overload and training management for strength, and progressive overload and training management for hypertrophy. So if you'd like that, and I've not sent that over to you, then just shoot me a message and I'll send it over. And what time is it now? Have I gone way too fast? What? Okay, cool. 1 rep max testing. Here we go. So I mentioned it briefly at the start. Testing a 1 rep max at the start of a program, and then retesting at the end of a training block or in between a couple of training blocks, means that you can recognize your success in terms of gaining strength. It's also useful for recognizing hypertrophy as well. Obviously, hypertrophy, the mirror, is by far the best indicator of that. But strength and muscle mass do come hand in hand. So we're going to test the main exercises at the start of the program. That is your key performance indicators. And as I said before, don't be tempted to test this too often. It's not going to bring you any extra benefit whatsoever. The best thing you can do is test it, start a program, progressively overload, test it again at the end. Just remove any level of focus on your 1 rep max until you've gone through that 8 weeks. I'd say test it every 8 weeks at the max. As I've mentioned, there's no benefit doing it more often than that. And then kind of pairing this with the deloads, it can be useful to test it after a deload week, because that is when you're going to be at your strongest. If you've gone through the duration of a program and you've built up that physiological stress through the duration of the program, and then you test, then that's going to be not as strong a lift. You're not going to be able to produce as much force as if you take a deload, let your body recover and super compensate, and then do your 1 rep max test with a chat. 1 rep max. So a 1 rep max is the maximum weight that you can lift for 1 rep. The way we would test that is an indicator of max strength, basically. The way we would test that is you do your warm-up, the full warm-up, which all of you should hopefully be doing. And then you do 1 warm-up set of, say, 15 reps with a really light weight, another warm-up set of 10, another warm-up set of 8. And then what I'd do is I'd go 5 reps, 3 reps, quite heavy, and then I would try my first 1 rep. If we're successful in that first one, gauge it based off how well it felt. If it felt quite tough, but you got it, then add the tiniest bit of weight on and attempt it again, making sure you're resting for 5 minutes in between each round, okay? That's going to mean that your phosphocreatine system, the energy system that is responsible for any intense exercise, about 3 to 7 seconds in duration, that takes 5 seconds to fully recover. 5 minutes to fully recover. So making sure we're doing that so your body has the energy available to perform to its maximum capacity every single time. So if it felt quite hard, then just add on a tiny bit of weight, rest for a long period of time, and then attempt it again. If it felt easy, then feel free to pop on like 5 kg and then do that again. And then all you're doing is pop the weight up, pop the weight up, pop the weight up, until you fail, basically. So it can be helpful to have a spotter there on something like a squat or a bench press, just for confidence. Or another kind of way to do it by yourselves if a spotter isn't available is just to not push it quite as hard. So kind of do an RPE 9. You meant to be doing this. I'll chat to you about this afterwards, in person, not in person, on chat. You can if you want. It's not a necessity. It's not a necessity in the slightest. If you are interested to see your 1 rep max increasing, then you can. But it's not. If you're not, it's not going to bring anything to your training. This is just for if you're wanting to see that strength increase. So I'm rambling a little bit here on the 1 rep maxes. But yeah, it's just a gauge of strength, and it can be interesting if you want to do it, but you don't have to test your 1 rep max. What's next? Hey, does anyone know the time? I don't have any sort of indicator of time on here at all. If anyone got any questions, as in, please send me questions. Please send me questions on the chat box. Nope, silence. I've been comprehensive. What's everyone having for dinner then? 8:10. Cool. So is everyone, do you want us to record your 1 rep max? Yes. So if you do test your 1 rep max, record it on Trainerize, and record that in the tracker as well, because that means that's dead easy just to look for me to check and for you to check as well. The more places it's logged in, the better it's going to be. But again, as I said, I want to stress that this isn't something that you have to be doing. This is something that can be a good indicator of your strength going up. I'm just following along for future ref, as I am only just beginning with strength and flexibility. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, you could test it since focusing on strength. But again, key thing is it's not a necessity in the slightest. The biggest take-home point from today. Yeah. Where the hell am I going? Is this. The biggest take-home point from today is this graph. It's understanding about the management of your training. It's understanding that you don't have to take every lift to failure. If you're looking at overloading for strength, if you're looking at pushing for strength, then following this overload pattern. If you're looking to overload for hypertrophy, then kind of going 2 reps in reserve, leapfrogging between intensity and volume. And just kind of a key point is learning to understand your body, learning to understand maybe if you did take it too hard one session and you recognize that that is affecting a subsequent session, then noting that and then toning it back a little bit the next time is what I would say. Is there anything else that anyone would like me to touch on? It doesn't even have to be related to this webinar. If you've just got any questions that you feel like could be interesting, then fire ahead. I'll give it a couple of minutes, and then if not, I'll let you all get on with the rest of your evening, because I've been chewing your ears off and going on tangents for a wee bit of time now. Why did you get rid of the mullet? Just because I don't know, it was a bit impulsive, if I'm honest with you. I was in Penrith over the weekend for my friend's birthday, and I said if he let us go out with his gun, then I'd let him shave my mullet off. So we went out with the gun and he took the mullet off. I actually quite like it. I actually really, really like it. You not like it, Steph? Yeah, get a big thumbs up. Thank you very much. Right. I'm going to let you all get off now. Thank you very much for attending this, and I think it's probably thank you very much for your patience. Chewing your ears off this evening. I'll rehearse the next one in front of the mirror. Right. You all have a good evening. Big love.